Hey guys, welcome to another video. My name is Ian. Welcome back to the channel, Ian the Reader. Today, I thought it would be fun to go ahead and recommend to you guys 10 thriller books that are perfect for the Halloween season. I read a lot of thrillers and a lot of mystery books, and oftentimes I would recommend them to people who like spooky stuff, but I think there's definitely a line between books that are thrillers that you can kind of enjoy year-round and books that are best enjoyed, or at least enhanced by reading them around Halloween time. And so today I wanted to recommend, like I said, 10 thrillers that I think are perfect for this season. There's something either about the atmosphere, about the setting, about the plot, whatever it is, there's something about them that I think truly can be best enjoyed during the Halloween season. So without any further ado, let's jump into the video. First up, I wanted to recommend a book by one of my favorite thriller authors, that being Samantha Downing. The book is My Lovely Wife. So most people who have read Samantha Downing have read this book. I think it is definitely her most popular book. It is her debut novel, and while I love all of her novels, and my favorite by her is actually her second novel, He Started It, My Lovely Wife is definitely one that I think is best enjoyed around Halloween time. So what's this book about? I'm going to be as vague as possible and just kind of pitch it the way it's pitched on the cover, but know that it's really, really good, first and foremost. This book is essentially a married couple who want to spice things up rather than, going on vacation or what have you. They start killing people together, and that is the general setup. But there's a lot more that goes on here. This is the definition of a dysfunctional family and a dysfunctional marriage. While they do work on things together in some regard, both of them have secrets that they're keeping from everyone, but also from each other. This is a book that is twisted, dark, and absolutely unpredictable. I love My Lovely Wife. If you've read this book and have enjoyed it or not enjoyed it, I do recommend He Started It by this author as well. But if you're new to this author, My Lovely Wife is a great starting point for Samantha Downing and a great book to read around Halloween time. Next, I wanted to recommend a Riley Sager book. He has some really great books that are definitely good around Halloween time, but I feel like the best one for Halloween season is Home Before Dark. Now, some people describe this book as horror, but I don't really think that's the case. I definitely get more of a thriller vibe from this book. That being said, there's some things about it that maybe I guess could lean towards horror, but it's a good starting point. If you don't read a lot of horror but you like thrillers, this is a great bridge between the two. So Home Before Dark follows a young woman as she is sent to pack up her old family home that she didn't even realize was still in the family. She lived there very briefly with her parents and her sibling. I want to say she has one sibling. I can't 100% recall. But she lived there for some time when she was a child, but not for very long, and they left the house under very, very mysterious circumstances. She thought that was the last of it. She thought they sold the house, but when her father passes away, she finds out that the house was still owned by him, and now she has to go and get it ready to sell. But there's some things going on. First of all, there is a caretaker of the estate that is a little bit too comfortable there, and additionally there are some other things both in the past and the present that make the main character start to question whether or not everything is 100% real or if there might be some supernatural stuff going on at the house. Things go from there. This is a book that really made me fall in love with Riley Sager's writing. It showed me what he was capable of. When I read this book, I had read one other book by him before, and I thought it was okay. This is the one that made me really interested and got me to the point where I wanted to read more of his works, and I'm so glad that I did because I found some other favorites as well. I think Riley Sager is definitely a hit-or-miss author, but for the most part, I think people agree that Home Before Dark is one of his best books. It's one of my favorites, and it probably always will be. I think it's my second favorite. You can check my Riley Sager ranking video down below if you want to hear all my thoughts, though. Next up, we have The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. So what's interesting about this book is that I don't remember it very well. I read this book about 3 years ago. I actually did it as part of a reading vlog where I tried 3 thriller authors I'd never tried before. I can leave that link down below, I guess, but I don't know if I'd watch it because I don't know if it's any good because it was a long time ago. But what I do remember about this book is that it's a multi-timeline story following a family that live in this house, and they have some people that move in with them as kind of like tenants. And there are some twisted things going on with the families here. And additionally, there are some confusing family ties, both in the past and the present, that you kind of have to discover as you go along. There are a lot of mysteries at work here. It's one that can be a little bit convoluted at times, but ultimately the reveals I remember to be really shocking and really engaging. There's also a sequel to this book that I have yet to read, so maybe this will be a great recommendation for me. I'll have to pick up The Family Upstairs again, and then I'll read the sequel, which I think is called The Family Remains. I'm not not 100% sure, but I'll put the picture here. But yeah, I remember the atmosphere of this one being really eerie, and there's being some really great twists, so I think it is a great thriller to read around Halloween time. I've read some other Lisa Jewell books and really enjoyed them, but I think those are a little bit more summery. I think this one is great for Halloween time, though. Next up is one that I read earlier this year. That is The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. This is a really, really strange book that I think just works for kind of like the summer into autumn time really well. And I think there are certain things about the tone and the atmosphere that are just kind of like a fever dream that works really well for Halloween. So in this book, we are at a grand opening of a very fancy hotel resort type location, but it's much more complicated than that. One, we have some past issues coming into the present, people coming to the hotel opening to confront some old complicated relationships. And additionally, we have a lot of tension going on in this area because the locals did not want this hotel to be here, but it is now here. There are some weird cultish vibes to this book. There are some crazy twists in this one, and it just has this really brooding, dark atmosphere that kind of lingers throughout the whole story from start to finish. It's definitely a slow-paced book, but if you can get on board with the pace of it, I think that it's absolutely incredible, and you very immediately find out that things go terribly wrong at this grand opening, but putting those pieces together takes some time. And I think that this book is a fantastic read for Halloween time. I loved it so much. It's my favorite Lucy Foley book. Hopefully you enjoy it. If you end up reading it, please let me know what you think. Next up is such an iconic book. I think some people kind of forget that it is a thriller because it's kind of like a psychological thriller, less traditional, but it's amazing. And that is Shudder Island by Dennis Lehane. If you don't know what happens in this story, stop the video and go read it, because this is one of the most iconic plot twists of all time. It's common knowledge basically at this point, because again, it's one of the most famous twists in all of literature and film at this point. But if you don't know what it is, go read the book, because this book is absolutely incredible. We follow a detective, I believe, or a cop, as he goes to this insane asylum on this island to find out what's going on with this mystery that he's trying to solve revolving around a death. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to tell you anything else except that this book takes place on that coastal island as a storm is coming in, and this book is insane. It is perfect for Halloween. I think that it is one of the best thrillers ever written. Dennis Lehane is one of my favorite authors. This is a 5-star easily. And again, if you don't know what happens, go read it right now, please. Next up is one that I think a lot of people think is a horror book because of what it's related to and how it's been adapted, but it really is more of like a detective thriller type story, and that is Red Dragon by Thomas Harris. So this is the first book in the Hannibal Lecter books, or like the Silence of the Lamb kind of things, but it's definitely more of like a thriller detective story than it is a horror novel. Even Silence of the Lambs arguably is as well, but Red Dragon especially, we follow a detective who is on the hunt for a killer, and Hannibal is there. He comes into the story kind of similarly to Silence of the Lambs, but he isn't the main focus of the story. This book is absolutely incredible. It's the only book in the series I've read so far. I don't know why. I need to read some more, but it is absolutely perfect for Halloween season. My goodness, because it is incredibly unsettling, and there's just a darkness to it that is so compelling. Red Dragon is definitely not for the faint of heart, but I think it is not as bad, quote unquote, as like the movies, or as intense as perhaps The Silence of the Lambs is. I think Red Dragon is really approachable and a really good thriller, honestly, a really great detective story, so check it out. Next up is one that you may not have heard of. I feel like I never hear people talk about this book, and that is The Echoman. This is dark. No doubt about it. Yeah, this book is really twisted. It's one of the hardest to read thrillers that I've ever read, just because the crimes and the serial killer in this book are just some messed up stuff happens. So we follow a detective, a woman who is a single mother, and she's navigating that, but additionally there is a killer that is killing women viciously, and she's just trying to figure out how everything's connected. I'm not going to go too much into it. Just know that this was one of the most intense thrillers I've ever read. This is like very much on the heavy side of thrillers though. Like I said, I read a lot of mystery thrillers, but this one was hard for me to read at times. So if you are okay reading like maybe Karen Slaughter books, or some, horror stuff as well, I think this is definitely for you. I do want to recommend some of those. Some of these are more approachable. This one is not. I would say that this is for more like seasoned thriller readers or somebody who has a strong stomach. The mysteries in this are crazy and the reveals are insane, and it's one that I've thought about a lot, and I think it is incredible and needs to be read more by thriller readers. But again, it's not for the faint of heart. If that is a pitch for you that works for you, then go read it, because I think you'll love it. But if not, just know yourself and be careful. Be careful out there. Going to the lighter side, though, is one that I feel like is a very approachable story and has a very interesting angle to it that I haven't read in anything else. And that book is called City of the Lost. It is the first book in the Rockton series by Kelly Armstrong. I think that's what the series is called. But it's a really interesting concept. So in this, we follow a young woman who gets in a difficult situation and needs to escape. And she finds out about this place called I don't think it's actually called City of the Lost. I think it's called Rockton. But it is a City of the Lost. Essentially, it is a city for people who need to disappear, who need to leave their former lives, take on a new identity, and just live safely in this city. And so that's what it is. It's a very strange situation. It's one that I think is not really plausible, obviously, but if you can get past the outlandishness of the idea, it's a very fun concept and one that I think is done really, really well. As she kind of goes through this process, though, she finds out that things are kind of amiss in this town and there may be a killer out there as well. So I think this is really fun. Like, it really is very approachable as far as that goes. And Kelly Armstrong, I believe, has written quite a few like paranormal romance books or things like that. And you can definitely tell like there's some romance angles to this story. But just this atmosphere of this city that has so much mystery to it, and the crimes that are taking place in it, I think is perfect for Halloween time. I think it's lighthearted enough and kind of weird enough, just out there enough, that it is definitely more approachable than some of the other ones, specifically the Echoman. And it's just a fun time. It really is. It's a series that I want to revisit. I think I'll probably want to reread book 1 just to get refamiliarized with the characters again, because it's been probably 2 or 3 years since I read it. But the concept is just so fun that I think a lot of people would enjoy it. Next up, we have the Chestnut Man. This is another dark one. Not nearly as dark as the Echoman, but pretty dark. So this is a serial killer mystery detective story as well, but it's a translated work and it does have a Netflix adaptation that I have not yet watched. But essentially, there's a serial killer on the loose and he has a calling card of these little Chestnut Men dolls that he leaves at the scene of every crime. There is also some kidnapping that takes place in this story, and we follow detectives who are on a race against the clock to try to find this killer. This book is full of twists and truly has a climax that had me like tearing through this book. I absolutely loved it. It's a little bit of a longer story. I want to say it's like 500 pages, but it flies by. One thing I will say that is interesting as well about this book is that the writer of this novel was actually a TV writer first, and this definitely feels like it's written as a TV show in some ways. It's very snappy. There are descriptions, but it's very to the point. He doesn't waste a lot of time. And so there's a lot that happens in this book, but the reading is just so snappy and fast-paced. It is very easy to get through. And again, the ending was wild. I'm still thinking about it. I would like a sequel. Or something. This guy needs to write something else very soon, please. But I highly recommend The Chestnut Man. It, again, is a longer one, so if you're a fast reader who can fit this in between now and Halloween time, go for it. Otherwise, it's good year-round, but especially around Halloween. I think that's when I read it, actually, was like the week of Halloween a couple years back. I recommend. And finally, we have the most recent read on this list for me. That is The Whisper Man by Alex North. I read this as part of a TBR challenge with Jake and Stacey, whose channels I'll link down below. But The Whisper Man is great for Halloween time. It's one that rides the line between thriller and horror very, very well. In this book, we follow quite a few different characters, actually. But the setup is there was a serial killer years ago who was killing children. He was found and arrested and put away, and now it's like 20 years later and killings start happening again, that are very reminiscent of the previous killings. So police are wondering if there's a copycat killer, if they caught the wrong guy, and then we are also following a man and his child who move into this kind of creepy house, and some weird things start happening when they move in. I will leave it there, but just know that there is some really fantastic pacing here, some great character relationships as well that I was really surprised by, and there's also some really twisted and like creepy imagery and moments throughout the story that really had me on the edge of my seat, as well as a finale that I think is really well done and very, very memorable. I've read a couple books by Alex North now, and this is definitely my favorite. I highly recommend. So those are the 10 thriller books that I think are best read around Halloween time. What thrillers do you plan on reading this season? And if there's one that you think would be perfect for Halloween time that I didn't mention, please leave a comment down below, because I will definitely be fitting some more thriller and horror books in before the month is over. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I will see you in the next video. Bye!